there's plenty there.
You know. Okay. And actually, I was speaking to Paul. She says just to bring the kids with you.
Yeah, you have to give me your card.
I will. Yeah, I'll give you my card before we leave. Welcome to Healthy Frontiers. This is a show dedicated to the education of our viewers. My name is Dr. Bizzoni. Tonight's topic is vision and sports, and my special guest is Dr. Donald Teig. Dr. Teig is the director of the Institute for Sports Vision in Ridgefield, Connecticut. He's also the founder of Sports Performance Centers and the president. 27 years ago, Dr. Teig actually pioneered vision performance enhancement techniques, and since then he's worked with many major baseball clubs. He's worked with the NBA. He's worked with professional sports, including professional tennis and golf. And Dr. Teig has done many things recently that we'd like to mention. He's involved with the 2008 Olympics, and he'll be involved in that. He's also been an author for many years, and he's lectured throughout the country. He's an accomplished vocalist with a group called the Retrotones, which you can see him perform in New York City and around Connecticut. And he has just a whole list of credentials that if I showed you the pages, it would be just too much to list. Even recently, he's been on the Today Show and many different TV programs. He's a fine man, and we'd like to welcome Dr. Teig to the show.
Thanks, Luke.
Welcome, Dr. Teig.
Thank you.
Okay. To begin with, Dr. Teig, tell me, a patient comes into you, and how would you examine a patient differently if they were a sportsman or an athlete versus your standard eye exam?
Several years ago, and it's probably a long time now, I concluded that a general eye exam just didn't get into the skills that are important in athletics. You could probably isolate 30 different skills that go way beyond just, can you read the eye chart? Do I need glasses? Not to downplay that, because you still have to see clearly before you can do any of these other things. But I can rattle off a list of things to you right now that people don't think about that are so critical in sports, such as, we all know, eye-hand coordination, eye-foot coordination,
right.
Awareness peripherally, depth perception, timing, agility, concentration, all these different components that go into seeing clearly. And we've developed equipment that not only tests for these things, but trains it as well. So the workup that we do may take 2 hours to complete.
Correct. Okay, so that gives you all the information you'll need to kind of go to the next step with these different sports. And each sport, I'm sure, has a different, you're looking for different things with each sport.
Right, and each individual has different visual demands or problems that have to be very personalized too. So when we train 3 areas. The first phase I call visual calisthenics. It's kind of like getting the eyes strong enough to focus quickly, to track easily, to work together as a team, to improve depth perception. Once all of those basics are in place, then we get into this visual motor training, which has to do much more with performance, timing, hitting a baseball, concentration, quickness, agility. All of that is trainable. And then the final icing on the cake, as far as I'm concerned, is what we call the visual mental component of sports. Now that you know you've got all the skills in place, you have to believe in yourself. And that's teaching you how to visualize success rather than failure. That's our program.
That's a great program. How did you get into it? How did you get started with this whole time? You know, you're an optometrist. You got your degree from Pennsylvania College of optometry, I understand. And how did you get going with this?
Well, one night in Ridgefield, Connecticut in 1979, I had the good fortune of having dinner with a couple of guys on the New York Yankees who happened to be friends of the guy who was the head of Parks and Recreation in our town. And over a few beers and dinner, we got to talking about the role vision played in their sport and how the eye doctors weren't addressing those needs. So one thing led to another. In my town, the gentleman who was the editor of Tennis Magazine, knew about what I had discussed with these guys and invited me to go do the men's tennis tour. I also approached Major League Baseball and got one of the contact lens companies to sponsor my travel to spring training, and I had a huge response from Major League Baseball. They were interested.
They were very interested.
So I had to pinpoint teams because I was still seeing patients in my office, and I couldn't stay away that long.
Yes,
so I went down to spring training for about a week, 10 days, and worked with about 6 teams and started some basic testing, which has developed into a much more involved process in the year 2007.
Sure. Okay. And what are some anecdotes? I know you've worked with some serious people, some top athletes. Who were some of the athletes that you worked with?
Oh, the list is endless. I mean, one of the most interesting things I can tell you as a baseball anecdote is I remember working with the Chicago White Sox many years ago, and I was at their spring training camp. And at that time I was in solo practice. Now there were 4 of us in our practice. But so I was down there by myself, and I was recruiting other doctors to help me out. And 2 of them bailed out on me the last day of the testing because they had to get back to their practices. And I was really working hard trying to get the rest of these players tested. Everything ended, and I'm sitting in the locker room with these people. Jimmy Pearsall, Minnie Minoso, Hank Greenberg, and Bill Veeck, and Paul Richards. And here I am with these 5 legends of baseball. And I remember Bill Veeck having the wooden leg, and he actually had an ashtray in his leg, and he was smoking, and he would put his cigarettes out in his leg in the ashtray. And I took a picture with Hank Greenberg and Bill Veeck, and I remember when my dad was alive, he saw that picture, and he couldn't get over that for days. It was great.
That's great. Jimmy Pearsall, what a colorful character he was, wasn't he?
And Minnie Minoso.
And Minnie Minoso,
as well.
So you were with them.
Yeah.
So, tell me about your vision training program, Don. All right, what is that all about? What does it involve?
Any athlete, and I mean from the little leaguer to the professional, and actually we enjoy working more with the amateur athlete because they have a lot more to gain.
Yes.
So they would come to our office. First they go through a general exam. You can't avoid the fact that you have to have healthy, efficient vision, efficient eyes before we go any step further. So that can take an hour. And then we reschedule that athlete, patient, for another 2 hours to go through this evaluation. In the beginning of the evaluation, we do sort of a personality profile because we want to know what type of an athlete we're dealing with. There are basically 4 personalities. Kind of a Michael Jordan, very competitive type, an analytical type athlete, a hard-working type athlete, and then what I like to call the flake, sort of like a Dennis Rodman type. And when you get those kind of personalities, you want to know who you're dealing with. So you do that personality performance profile. Then we begin the testing of these different performance skills. And it involves some equipment that looks almost more like a gymnasium than it does an eye exam.
And I understand a lot of that equipment you've developed over the years, and most of the people doing this visual performance enhancing are using a lot of the equipment that you've developed.
Well, we actually, our performance laboratory, if you want to call it that, is now being used as the prototype for the 2008 Olympic program that we're doing in conjunction with Johnson & Johnson, and it's going to be done throughout the world leading up to the Olympics. So, yeah, it is kind of our testing program. So the athlete goes through that. They've been through the 2 hours. They get a report that tells them all their strengths and weaknesses, which includes a graph that kind of shows them these strengths and weaknesses. And you don't want to leave somebody hanging. When all that's done, we then schedule them to come for training. And the training can go on a minimum of 3 months. They spend an hour a week with us and go home, and every day they have about 15 to 20 minutes of homework to work their way up through this progression of first general eye training and then specific sports-related eye training. And once those 13, 14 weeks are over with, usually, and I'm pretty confident to tell you that it happens more often than not, their game improves dramatically.
Is that right?
Well, I'm one who believes that my bias is so strongly towards the human eye because without these, you don't go anywhere. And so if you can make this tell your brain to tell your body what to do, you're going to play your sport better.
Oh, that's terrific. And talk to me a little bit more, too, about the Summer Olympics now that you're going to be in. Okay, in the 2008 Summer Olympics, and you're going to be using a lot of this equipment, as you said, it's going to be standard almost at the Olympics, correct?
Yeah. In November of 2005, I was approached by the Director of Professional Services at Johnson & Johnson. Now, they're opening up 15 vision care institutes throughout the world. Right now, about 9 of them are up and running. There's one in Prague. There's many in Southeast Asia. There's one now that is opening in Milan, Italy, shortly. Of course, we have one in the United States here in Jacksonville, and we're also building that same kind of training center at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs for the U.S. team. So I was approached to put a dream team together, made up of doctors, researchers, athletic trainers. In fact, Mike Saunders, who is the former trainer of the New York Knicks.
To work with them.
Yeah, Mike is on my team.
Yes.
And we have people from all over the world on this team, from China, from Brazil, from Canada, all over the place. And we have met, and we have 3 tasks. One, to write a curriculum so that this could be taught to professionals throughout the world, meaning how do you administer this testing and training.
So after the Olympics, it's going to go right on to the professional arena.
Right. It's not going to stop. It's going to be disseminated throughout the world. Secondly, we were given the task of creating new technology, utilizing things like virtual reality and computerized eye tracking devices, sort of like the military uses in firing, and but applying it to sports. And then the third thing we were asked to do was to come up with this training center. So that each one of these facilities would have this training center. And that's what we've been doing. We're pretty far along in the process.
That's tremendous. That's going to be such an asset to have that and have you, with your team there. It's going to be great. Talk to me about contact lenses versus LASIK surgery, a little bit about that. I mean, we hear a lot about LASIK surgery now. What are the pros and cons for both with athletes?
Yeah, several issues there. First of all, technically, you shouldn't be ever thinking about LASIK surgery on anybody under the age of 21 because the eye is changing. There's too many things that can happen between age 7 or 8 and 21. So forget about LASIK surgery for that age group.
Okay, that's very important.
We do a procedure called corneal molding, where you use a contact lens that you put on the eye when you go to sleep at night. And when you wake up in the morning, remove this lens, it shapes the eye like LASIK surgery would do without the surgery. So we do it on a lot of people, whether it be young people or adults who don't want to have that surgery done.
That's tremendous. So that replaces the LASIK surgery for some conditions.
And it's non-invasive, and it deals with the same conditions that LASIK deals with. Now, with LASIK, especially for professional athlete, I'm not a big fan of it because my attitude is if you're a professional athlete and your career is on the line and you go ahead and have the surgery, and for whatever the reason is it doesn't work out as well as it should, this could be the end of a career for you. So I think there's issues there, and it's something that has to be considered very seriously by professional athletes. One of the problems we run into after LASIK surgery, especially for an athlete, is they lose something called contrast sensitivity. That's the ability to see fine detail. Now, if you tell a baseball player they won't be able to see fine detail reading one of Roger Clemens' fastballs or something along that line, it's not too pleasant. So that's where I come from in those categories.
And then different sports, there are different skills. Talk to me about, we were just talking about baseball a little bit. Tell me about some of the other sports, like basketball. Do you deal with those types of players as well?
Yeah, people say to me, well, certain sports, where's the vision? But you know what, even a swimmer has to decide when to make a turn underwater and has to make some spatial judgments to do that. Certain sports have different requirements. Take golf. The ball is stationary. So you're certainly not running and trying to see clearly. You're in a stationary position. But I would contend that hitting a golf ball is probably one of the most difficult visual things to do because there is no room for error. If your golf club strikes the ball slightly off center, the ball's in the woods. So the amount of fine eye-hand coordination needed in a golf swing is something we really want to evaluate. Now, I wouldn't evaluate anything like balance. Well, balance I would, but let's say eye-to-foot quickness or speed. That has no relevance to golf. Has a lot of relevance to basketball. Peripheral awareness has a huge relevance to basketball. You see people like Michael Jordan who are able to see their teammate out of the corner of their eye and throw this no-look pass. That's a skill. That's a peripheral awareness skill that you want to evaluate in a golfer. I don't think you'd be doing that for a bowler. Peripheral vision has no role. You want to be very focused centrally. So we do isolate these different skills for the different sports.
So that's great. And so if a tennis player comes in, you're going to evaluate him certainly differently than a golfer.
Yeah, I mean, if you're a tennis player, depth perception, very important. a little peripheral awareness if you're playing doubles, fine visual acuity, being able to see really clearly and be able to read rotation on the ball coming in, eye to foot quickness, things like that are going to be tennis related.
I'm sure people at this point are thinking, well, how do you do this? I mean, I'm even real curious. I mean, I'm sure you have different techniques and there's wonderful machinery. Just give me one or two that, you know, some of the tests that you would do, some of the simpler tests, even though they may be difficult, seemingly difficult. What would you do to help someone see the ball better? Say a little leaguer come in watching the ball.
I'll give you a perfect example. And this relates to an anecdotal story that took place. We have a piece of equipment called the Bassin Anticipation Timer. Okay. Think of it as a track of lights that you have to make a decision on timing. So we had a guy who was a defensive back for the Buffalo Bills. He was a #1 draft pick, and he had a horrible first season in the NFL. In fact, so much so that in a given game, he actually jumped up, came down, and then the receiver caught the ball, and his timing was totally off. When we evaluated him on this, he had no clue where that light was when it was getting to the point it was supposed to get to. So through repetition, in training with this equipment, we could get his timing to be more accurate. And the next year, he made All-Pro.
Wow.
So it's that kind of stuff.
So it could be trained, it could be taught, and just with practice, you're going to get there.
Yeah. We've worked with, in my career, John Van Beesbrook and Mike Richter, who were the goalies for the New York Rangers, and Glenn Healy, for that matter, using that same device, but with several tracks of lights coming in various angles and directions, where they're pretending to stop shots on goal from different positions. And by doing this stuff repetitively, and also creating extremes. For example, try doing it when you have a strobe light flashing, which is making you concentrate, or there's noise in the background, loud noise disturbing you. Then go out onto the rink and stop shots on goal, and it seems twice as easy, and the puck looks twice as large. So that's our philosophy and the way we do the training.
Oh, that's great. And with somebody behind when they're trying to throw a pitch in the World Series, everybody waving those handkerchiefs and all. Just what we're talking about.
And how about the guy on the foul line with the people with those sticks shaking them?
Oh, please.
Trying to mess their concentration.
That's for sure. I know you're a consultant with the Yankees, and I know you're a consultant for the Knicks and the Rangers also, right? What does that entail exactly? I mean, what do you do? Well, the Yankees will call you up and say, Don, we have a player who needs a little assistance, or do you evaluate the whole team?
It varies.
You pick it out.
It varies. With the Yankees, it's more like we get a phone call. Please take care of this guy, see what you think. For the Knicks, for about 16 years, every year we would go to preseason camp and run this evaluation battery of tests. And the players who were interested in enhancing their performance by getting involved in the training would stick with us and come up to our practice in Ridgefield and go through the training. Others would just be evaluated, and we could give the coaches some handy information. For example, it's the end of a game, and you're trying to steal a ball. Who from your guards has the quickest eye-hand awareness, who can make that quick first move? And we had a guy, of course, Charlie Ward years ago, who had very quick hands. So they would bring Charlie in those situations to try and steal a ball. So some of the information we were doing diagnostically became valuable for the entire season just from that standpoint.
That's great. Wow. And as these ball players start to age, there's certainly obstacles, not only ball players and athletes, but the average person. What are some of the obstacles that they face, especially, I guess, athletes?
I can tell you two very interesting things, which also are anecdotal, too. I worked with Wade Boggs for many years, and one of the greatest hitters of all time, especially a spectacular contact hitter. Okay? And I remember when Wade was 40 or 41 in his last year or two with the Yankees, him saying to me, I just noticed when I'm at the plate and I look at the pebbles down at the on the batting box that they're blurry. They don't look so sharp anymore. Well, he was 41 years old, 42 years old. He's losing his near focus like you have. That's why you're wearing those reading glasses. So what we did do with Wade, which was interesting, we have a piece of equipment that trains focus flexibility. So we try to, here's a guy who's just starting to run into this problem. And we put him on this biofeedback device that loosens up the focusing mechanism of the eye. And I was able to give him better flexibility so he could focus in on a pitch better, because now all of a sudden when you're that age and you're trying to time a pitch, as the ball's getting closer, you're losing the clarity.
Sure.
So that's an issue.
Right.
And I've run into that. That's one of the biggest issues. Golfers,
Yes.
putting. Why do the senior golfers start to run into issues with putting? Because their focusing flexibility becomes sluggish. Almost like if you think of the eye like a camera, the zoom lens of the camera has got rust in it all of a sudden.
Okay.
So you can't make those near-far shifts. And when you're putting, what do? You look at the hole, you look at the ball. And there's a lot of that focusing flexibility that you need. And that seems to be the biggest thing. So when you talk about an aging athlete losing reflexes, I personally think a lot of it is this focusing flexibility.
That's great. And Ted Williams, you had a story about Ted Williams. I mean, there is a story about Ted Williams that you can see the stitches on the balls that's coming into us. I never heard that before, so tell me about that one.
Yeah, it's really not my story. Every time I discuss this topic with people who love sports, especially baseball fans, they always say, tell me about Ted Williams, because everybody talked about Ted Williams' eyes. First of all, he was a fighter pilot in World War II. And as a fighter pilot, he went through vision training, because they did that with pilots in World War II. They went through actual eye exercise training. Well, they claim that Ted Williams could do several astounding things in baseball. See the stitches on the ball, read the rotation on the ball. Another thing they said is he could actually see his bat making contact with the ball.
Amazing.
Now, I have my own opinion on this, as you would imagine I would, and it's this. Whether he could or couldn't is really irrelevant. What's more relevant is that as a baseball player, the longer you can see the ball in flight towards your bat, the more likely you're going to be a good contact hitter. It's not that important whether you do see the ball hitting the bat or not. My guess is that 1 in a million times you do. And I bet you Ted Williams did. But I don't think you can bank on that. But as long as you're good at following, tracking, all the way in, as far in as possible, even in tennis, to see the tennis ball coming into the racket, maybe you can keep its focus up to this point. That's still a lot better than that point. So that's where I think that's what really makes the difference.
Okay, batting 400, I guess he has something special, huh?
A lot of great timing and being able to watch that pitch all the way in.
Concentration.
By the way, if you look at Derek Jeter when he bats, if there's a pitch he doesn't want to swing at, you'll notice he actually turns into the catcher and watches the ball going right into the glove. It's something I teach. We really have a system of hitting that we teach, which has to do with what we call soft focus and fine focus. Soft focus is the pitcher's ready to release the ball. He's going through all these antics. You as the batter should not be too intensely focusing on all that, because by the time you're ready to hit the ball, your eyes are going to be exhausted. So you want to kind of soft focus on that. And then as the pitch is coming in, I always teach hitters, including major league guys, to look for the letter R in rollings on the ball. Now, let's face it, you can't really see that letter R. But if you make the effort to look for it, you're going to be following the ball into the bat a lot more effectively, and you're going to be looking for a piece of the ball rather than the entire ball. The entire ball is too big. A piece of the ball is more precise, so you're more likely to make contact.
I mean, you seem to focus so much on attention and concentration and using your eyes just to focus. It seems, that's the key.
Big part of it. That's the key.
What are some of the new and exciting things that are going on in your field now in vision and in the new technologies?
Vision in sports is one component, and as I mentioned, there's all this new equipment that we're trying to come up with in design that, take that particular situation. Wouldn't it be great to be in your living room hitting a baseball through virtual reality?
There you go.
There's no ball, there's no field, but as far as you're concerned, you're wearing a special helmet that's creating a field and a ball, and you're actually able to time your pitch standing in your living room.
That's amazing.
So look at all the practice you'd be able to do when you're not just on the playing field.
Of course.
That's one of the things.
That's terrific.
Now, from a standard eye standpoint, our newest piece of equipment is something that analyzes the fibers that make up the optic nerve. Because one of the leading causes of blindness in this world is glaucoma. And glaucoma has to do with the nerve deteriorating. So we now have a device that can create almost like an MRI of the optic nerve fibers. If those fibers are breaking down early, you're going to be able to detect that disease sooner and treat it before it really causes damage. That's very exciting.
Very exciting. That's terrific stuff. And just before we conclude here, talk to me about your Ultimate Events program. Just give me a 2-minute plug on that one, because it says Ultimate Events is spectacular events and people can enjoy this. What is that all about?
In my spare time,
yes,
I have a whole separate business, which basically is creating ultimate events.
Right.
I'll give you some examples. A basketball event where you play in a fantasy basketball camp where each team has a former NBA player.
Right.
It's on a cruise ship, and you get trophies, and it's a lot of fun.
Sure.
Or a baseball academy where you go to the Dominican Republic, play on the fields there, and are coached by people like former major league coaches and players and that kind of thing.
Oh, isn't that fun?
I'm doing a project next year for equestrians.
Okay.
And it's down in Florida, in Wellington, Florida, where there's a huge winter event for equestrians, where we're going to be doing a symposium to teach equestrians more about how to be better focused, to concentrate better, to think better when they're riding horses, because after all, every sport has those demands and those pressures. So that's another ultimate event that we'll be doing.
Oh, that's terrific. And you still practice as an optometrist.
And I do see patients, and I have 3 partners, so we're still very busy in our practice.
Great. Hey, Don, give me just some tips for kids or parents to see, watch their kids in sports, and if they pick up any problems. Are there any tips for parents in this?
Definitely. First of all, I think too many parents are negligent in getting their kids' eyes examined.
Okay.
They think the school screening is enough, and we don't think it is. In fact, the National Eye Institute says you should be doing this once a year with your kids, getting their eyes checked. From a sports standpoint, what about the kid who's always dropping the ball in the outfield? Are they using 2 eyes together? You know, the school may say they have 20/20 vision, but do the 2 eyes work together as a team, or are they shutting down 1 eye, a lazy eye? Look for certain behavioral things like bumping into walls a lot, or clumsiness, or things along that line, or rubbing their eyes a lot, or complaining of headaches a lot. Those are things that need to be looked into.
And check into them, and the parents should get them to an optometrist
every year, once a year.
Great. Well, Don, I want to thank you for being on the show today. It's been great. You're a wonderful guy, and I want to wish you luck with the Olympics and all the new techniques and all the new gadgets you're working with. And anytime you want to come back on the show, please do.
It was a pleasure, and I'll come back anytime you want me.
Thank you so much, Doc.
Thanks.
Okay. If you have any questions for Dr. Teig, you can email us on the website that's posted, and I will shoot them over to Dr. Teig, and he'd be happy to answer any of those questions you might have about your children or about yourself. For now, I want to thank you for being so attentive, and hope to see you next time. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks.
Good. Thank you, Don.